We're coming to our second story court. The bell is an antique. My wife tells me this was from her side of the family, an aunt on her side of the family. She wasn't sure she was a teacher, but I think she probably used it to say, "Come and get it." So at any rate, when the first 20 minutes are up, I'll ring the bell, and when the second 20 minutes are up, I will ring the bell, and then we'll invite all of you to ask questions or to tell your stories. We didn't flip a coin to see who would go first, but Charlie said he could arm wrestle Ann. But then
So Ann goes first.
So, who'd like to go first?
Oh, Ann would.
You're very polite of you, Charlie.
That's good.
Okay, I would ask that you give your name and where you live and what your profession is. Obviously, we're doing education tonight. We hope to hear some really interesting stories. So, Ann, take it away.
My name is Ann Jolly Lourie. I grew up in Salem, and I came back to Salem to be a teacher here for 27 years. And I'm going to start right out, and I'm going to jump the gun on Charlie. I'm older than he is. I knew this was coming. So anyway.
I don't know how she could figure that out.
He makes sure every audience knows that. Anyway, I am very proud of Salem Central School, Washington Academy, and I am one of 5 siblings who attended there, graduated from there. My 3 sons graduated from Salem, 4 of my grandchildren, and now I have a great-grandson there. So we have a long history of connections with the Salem School. And I moved to Rupert 70 years ago, had a family, married, then went to college, did things a little backward. And in along about January of my senior year at college, I called Mr. Flint and said, I'm very much interested in a job at Salem. And thank you God, it was there for me. So I started in 1968, and I was there till 1995. And I had children of many of you here in the room, and taught 2nd, 3rd, 4th. 1 year of 6, I gave them back to wherever they came from. Anyway, and a multi-age. Had very supportive superintendents, Mr. Flint, Ann Baker, Will Ross. They always were, all of them, very supportive of classroom teachers. As many of you know, Rupert students have come down here for many years. I think if my statistics are right, the first 2 students from Rupert graduated in 1938, which is just about the year the new school was built.
Yes, it was in the process of being built at that time.
Originally, Rupert students went to Granville, used to take the train to Granville. But when the train service stopped, then Salem buses came to Rupert for many years. All the while, I lived on the Rupert Road, 153, even though I was in New York State. But the bus I was on, Les Tyler from Salem was the driver for many years. And they went all the way to Rupert. So anyway, it was great when I started teaching there were 3 people who had been my teachers. Eloise Mulligan in 6th grade. Now I'm losing the other one. Eleanor Campney, the school nurse, and Rosina Paquette had just started music when I was in high school. So I was there with teachers I had been with. There have been several teachers in Salem, or who taught in Salem from Rupert. John Pelton, I think, was math for a few years. Betty Higgins was a 4th grade teacher with Isabel Keyes many years ago. Rita Foster, I'm not sure, I think maybe about 5th grade.
Was.
Yeah, was it? And Ruth Gilbert, who of course was, librarian? Yeah, I think she.
Right, and we had a Mac who taught math for junior high
Helen
math.
Matt.
Right,
She
Helen
was
Matt.
she was from Paula.
She was from
Oh.
Paula.
I had her on the list, but she was from Paula. Yeah, Mac from over in Paula. Anyway, let's see. I think one of the greatest things that I appreciated being in a school the size of Salem was that you could keep track of your students as they went along. They were, it was K through 12, and you saw those kids whom you'd had in second, third, fourth. You saw them as they went up through junior high and high school. I know some here, particularly Charlie, have been very involved with the exchange program there in Salem. And I think my brother Rodney was one of the first
He was the first.
students with maybe the Flint,
He was the first one to go.
First
He
one
went to
to go.
Kagoshima, Japan.
And then one of my sons, Mark, went to Sweden. But during that interval, we had a chance to have students from, Sweden and Brazil. I think it was Joe from Brazil.
And Per Tenborg,
And Tony.
Tony Nocton Smith,
Tony Nocton Smith.
and Per Tenborg. He was the first one that you had.
Yeah, exactly. I tried to think of a few stories that I might tell about students. One student lived here in the village, and she walked to school, and she usually came to the little side door rather than coming in where she was supposed to. And she came in the first week after Christmas one year and announced to the whole class that she had received a horse for Christmas. And of course, everybody, oh my gosh, you got a horse. What kind of a horse? She said, Clydesdale. we knew she lived down on the street by the shirt shop. We knew she didn't get a Clydesdale. Anyway, another gal, a child, used to come in from Shushan, I think she might have lived in, and she was always exhausted. And her folks belonged to the Coon and Cat Club, and they took the kids out coon hunting every night. And this child would go over to the back of the room under the coats and hats and things and take her nap every day. And the other kids would say, Mrs. Lourie, she's sleeping. I'd say, let her sleep. She was never any trouble, but she was always tired. Anyway, I was lucky enough to have Al's daughter in my class and Charlie's daughter in my class, and I think I might have had Jack from the Macaulays over there. And I think we went through all four of yours.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, any questions about anything? I haven't covered my 20 minutes, but. I retired in '95, and I miss being there. Do you know how many students are there in Salem now?
About the same as when I started, around 550, I think.
I was going to say under 600. I think when I retired in '95, there was 800 and some, just under 900.
Yeah, we got up almost to 1,000 at one time.
I was going to say just under
And then
900.
it dropped like a rock.
Yeah, yeah. But it's a beautiful school, and it's had so many, uses and purposes during the year that aren't just education. I was remembering as a child, and I was 10 years old, riding my bike down to the Frankie Clark Day on the front lawn of the school with Governor Thomas E. Dewey. And my father was a farmer, my mother was busy, and it blows my mind that at age 10, they let me ride my bike down to this event. But I went safely over to the McMorris's house, which is right over here, and met up with their girls and remember going to that. So lots of graduation on the lawn, lots of happy memories. Yeah.
How many were in your graduating class?
I think it was 32. 32. We just lost a couple this year. Yeah, I've had, last year was my 70th reunion.
And there was I don't know if you remember it, but there was a number of years ago an attempt by some legislators in New York State to not allow interstate interaction as far as education. And they wanted to stop the Vermont students from coming to Salem or going to Granville for some money reason. And that went on for about a week until the legislators from Long Island stepped up and said, wait a minute, our kids go to elementary school here in this county and then they go to high school in another county. If you do what you want to do, you know, what are we supposed to do? You know, it's a real problem. So they finally just
Yeah, we have a
dropped the whole
different
thing.
arrangement now in the town of Rupert, and I am not particularly happy with it. Salem is no longer the designated high school, and so each family can choose where they want their children to go. So it has taken away the continuities, in my mind, of the families and the students, because some go to Granville, some go to Long Trail and Dorset, some go to Burn, Burton, and Manchester, and only 4 come to Salem this year. 4. The bus comes down with 4, one of whom is my grandson.
Yeah, and interestingly, for many years, the valedictorians of Salem Washington Academy came from Rupert. So we were happy to have them.
Yeah, they had for many years, you know, first they had a 1 through 8, then they had a K through 6, and of course now Rupert combines with Paulet for the Medowee Community School. So all our kids travel out of town.
And did you do were you there when the different constructions were going on? So you had the
Yes.
high school wing going
Yes,
on?
I
and the
was.
gymnasium?
I was out in the trailer building.
Well, that's what I was
Well,
thinking.
yeah,
And did
which-
you go down to the Fort Salem Theater?
No, I didn't. I didn't
was-
have to do that, but I was out in the
Trailer
trailer
building,
building.
that's right.
Yeah. Still one of the most beautiful school in the area. That's for sure.
It's been well maintained,
Yeah.
extremely well.
I have a comment. Ann was a wonderful colleague to work with, and
Thank you.
Charlie too.
Just mentioning of the fact that before they put the new wing on, and the 1955 wing was sold to the public. Actually, it was sold to Shushan because Shushan had its own 1 through 8 school. And so the selling scheme was that if you close your school, we will build this brand new wing for your students, many of whom came up on the train at that time. So the wing was done and they closed the school down in Shushan. So it was interesting to see the progression because when in 1965, when I did come, I discovered that the year before they had been teaching classes where the library is. They'd been teaching classes in the auxiliary room at the Presbyterian church where one of my children, I think was only one, was it one or both, went through there. At any rate, I'm not sure they got religion. But they did go to school, so you'd see all these kids walking up and down Main Street to and from because they had to go to the cafeteria to eat. Or if there was an assembly, then they would all just march up the street with their teachers. And but the school was so crowded at the time, they went into another building project and added more rooms and a new wing.
I haven't been in the school in quite a while. Have you ladies been in the school?
I think the retirement's out in the courtyard.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
courtyard.
Mhm.
But no. Has it always been, they always served lunch in the early years?
Yes,
I
in
Yeah,
fact,
I'll go over some of that in a little bit
Oh,
anyway.
okay.
yeah, okay. We'll
And the
let Charlie
stained
tell
glass
about that.
windows, did they always, at the original building, did they have the stained glass windows?
Yes, that was,
Mhm,
that,
yes.
that was
Yeah,
part
by
of,
subject matter even.
Yes, the health
Yeah.
one, the chemistry
Yeah,
one.
mine
yes.
had athletic things on my office.
The 55 addition encompassed where the tennis court was prior.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Well, you are old.
He just had a birthday not long ago.
Not sure.
well, if there are no other questions for Ann, I'm gonna ring Ann out and ring Charlie in.
Okay. Couple of things. First of all, I'm honored to be able to do this because I'm not a native. I wasn't from here originally, And now that we've had 4 storytellers, I am the youngest. Just thought I'd remind you of that. And it started, one of the good things I did in life was go to Springfield College. And after that, I was drafted, went into the Army, and after basic training, I went down to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and they took me out of training there. They were going to make an artillery surveyor out of me, and they put me in charge of the athletics and recreation of my battalion, and write for the battalion newspaper, and that was a real good job, but they ended up sending me to Korea, South Korea, and I worked as a clerk typist there for a short time. There were 17 of us going up to the 7th Infantry Division when we got to Incheon, and we didn't have any assignment. We all had one thing in common: we knew how to type. So I worked as a clerk typist for a short time, and then I ended up running a warehouse there, and I ran the liquor warehouse for the 7th Infantry Division, and came back to Oakland, California, got discharged, came back to my hometown of Milton, Massachusetts, and went back to Springfield about where there were job openings. And there weren't many at that time. This is in August of 1960. And I took out a map. I said, well, there's where I'd like to go, and that was Salem. And I called Ken Streeter, who was the supervising principal at the time, comparable to a superintendent. And he said, can you come up for an interview? I said, yeah. He said, when can I? I said, well, anytime. He said, how about today? I had to borrow a car, broke down in Bennington. Didn't really know where I was going, but came up through, went past Cambridge Central and so forth, and got here probably, I had called him, and I called him when I got here, when Bob Payne's gas station used payphone. He didn't have cell phones, that's for sure. And he was having dinner, so he put me off for hour. I went into Jacko's, ordered a Coke, had a cigarette at that time too, that was pretty stupid. And he took one look, he says, you must be applying to be the new coach. And I go, whoa, small town. So he told me all about his boy Jim upstairs and so forth. And so I went down on Ken's front porch. He interviewed me, took me up to the school, showed me the gym and so forth, and explained a few things, and asked me what kind of a program I would give him in physical education. And I said, well, everything from football to dance. And so that went well, and my predecessor had been an exceptional coach, so that was tough, and I think the community was looking more for coaching than teaching physical education. But we did quite a few things. At that time, I was teaching just boys, and I had 3rd grade, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th grade boys, and then the junior high and the high school. In the high school, it was twice a week, and that was true with all of the others too. My counterpart for the girls was in her first year also, Gail Ash. It's Gail Schaefer now. She left after 2 years and went to Hudson Falls, very successful volleyball coach over there. I haven't been in touch with her quite a while. So we went at it, and it was a little different for our kids because they had got excused. If they're on sports teams, when I came, they got excused from their physical education, and I didn't believe in that. So now they had to come to class, and some of them weren't too happy about that. But that worked out as time went on. And we did some things, and I think the physical education program prior to mine there was basically football, basketball, track, baseball, not too much done with gymnastics and so forth, which wasn't a real strong point of mine, but the equipment was like new, and we started using the high bar and the horse, and the parallel bars and things like that. And over a period of time, we were doing physical education 5 days a week. And unfortunately, they're not doing that now. I think they're going 3, but I'm not sure exactly. But we introduced quite a few things. I had a tumbling group in the morning, and we had a springboard. I can remember seeing Pete Hanks going up and hitting the springboard and doing flips onto the stage, and so forth. Because we were playing our basketball games at that time in what's now the auditorium, small gym. And first 4 years here, Frank Green was coaching very successfully. We won the sectionals 4 years in a row for the first time in basketball. And I started out, my assignment was to coach football, which was a little over my head right at that stage. And then I was going to do modified basketball at junior high, but I did that as well as moved up, took the JV because Frank was doing both. And I was doing track. He asked me about baseball. I said, not my thing at all, so I didn't get involved with that. And the configuration of the school is altogether different than today. Now, right across the street, when you go down the street there by the circle, there were houses all on the right-hand side, and we didn't own all those fields at that time. And we had a barn there and a basketball court, and there was a tennis court pretty much where it is now. But you could drive down through, we had a playground in that area also, and you could drive down where the new gym is now, and you couldn't take the road that's on, the side of the elementary school. That wasn't there at that time. That's another whole story. But we had an open noon hour for the high school kids, and it was a dangerous situation. And some of the cars would go racing out of there and so forth. I had playground duty every day, which I loved. And they had a, open noon hour for the older kids. And they'd go to Jacko's and Saragani's and so forth for a snack. And I know when Jim was on the board, Jim Tomasi, they changed that. And we had a closed noon hour and everybody had lunch at school, and his father was not happy with it at the time. I remember at that time, but Jim said he didn't need it anyway. So, but on playground duty, I had that, I forget, for about an hour or so with different age levels out there. And my philosophy on it was a little different. All the guys that were causing problems and so forth, we played touch football. Everybody else just kind of did their own thing, so forth. The other end, the elementary teachers had to take turns with the playground for the lower grades, up to 3rd grade. And we didn't have any teachers' aides in those days. So it was very, very different. Let me see, what else can I come up with here? Oh. On Saturdays, I was working for the Youth Commission. They had offered me the whole job, and I didn't take it when I first came. But I was working Saturday mornings, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade boys with basketball. And I said, this is ridiculous. And I started bringing in some 6th grade girls. And I was breaking all the rules because we played boys' rules. And we're playing basketball, and I was even criticized by one of the physical education teachers that it might be too strenuous for the girls, and I said, that's nonsense. And that same group, which had some very good athletes, did that for 3 years with me, for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. In 9th grade, they all became cheerleaders. And I was saying, ridiculous. And one of the girls that played in that group now, and she's in her 70s, and she's still playing softball and on outstanding teams. And later on in our physical education, just for scheduling, we decided we were going to try some co-ed physical education classes. which there's a lot of people who still think that's ridiculous, but there was some real strong things with it. And we did that with just one group, and some kids didn't want to be there and others wanted to. And so, but it went pretty well. So the next thing you know is we went all the way, that all of the classes became co-ed. And I still believe in it. Just some little things. Prior to that, we would do some square dancing. And everybody's like this and so forth when we're going to have square dancing. After we had co-ed classes, no problem. I'm going to dance with so-and-so and such, and they handled it beautifully. It was no problem at all. And, you know, and so we modified some of the games that we played, and some things we didn't do together. You know, we separated them within our classes. But we had some rules in some of our games that, you know, a guy couldn't just have the ball all the time, or a girl couldn't have it all the time. They had to pass in between them and stuff like that. So we had one, we called it Perry ball. This came fairly late, and I took a combination of speedball and Australian rules football and so forth, and made up our own game. And we had a lot of fun with it. The rules, I think, changed every day, but we had a lot of fun with that. And in addition to that, when I first came, I had a room with Mary Hastings. Mary Hastings took kids in for rooms, and Gil Flint had been there, I think, at one time before my time. And then Michael Plasky was there, Pete Frazier went there, and you know, she treated me like her son. She was just fantastic. And I stayed there the first year, and then was married and so forth, and had her own apartment. But she was awfully good to me. She lived right across from where they have the Revolutionary Cemetery, and I didn't have a car when I first got here, so I got my first vehicle, I guess probably late November, early December. So that was very different. It was very good. You know, I was really wrapped into the community then on, and then became even more so as time went along. I got very involved. Our founder, Al, I joined the Rotary when we started that. And like as mentioned, I worked a lot with the exchange program. And because I got to travel, my daughter went as an exchange student. She went to Australia, and I went and visited her. And then I went back there after I retired. They were having an international convention there. I went back and stayed with her families, and then went and stayed with Andrew Heddich, who had been an exchange student that we had from Australia. And I stayed a week with him up in Brisbane. And then I took in their capital at Canberra and Sydney and so forth before coming home. I also visited with John Lundgren's daughter in Belgium. Flew to Brussels, got lost there, but then went up into Amsterdam, and then we went down to Liège where she was staying, went to the Rotary clubs there, and then had the opportunity to go to Normandy, and went back, spent time in Paris, and then went over to Switzerland and to Austria, to Salzburg. So that was a great trip. And just as a sideline, I'm sure most of you know John Lundgren. John didn't really want to go, and he didn't want to fly and everything else, and we were riding with him down to New York. He drove us down to New York City to get the flight out. I'm saying, I'm not sure this was a good idea. And anyway, we got over there, and he had a wonderful time. He just had a great time. And the only lapse when we were going into Paris, he wasn't happy about going into a big city, but he had a great time there too. But we took a ride. I was driving, we went up to Amsterdam, and we needed to get gas. So we stopped to get some gas, and John got out and went to the men's room, and the lights go out all of a sudden. And anyway, Judy said, "Where's John?" I said, "Oh, he'll be right back." Well, no. So I go looking. Well, when they had turned the lights out, it locked the door to the men's room. He got locked in it. He's standing on a doorknob looking out the transom window up above. So I go back into the guy in the building, and I'm explaining to him that he didn't really understand English, but what he did, he just cracked up too. So we got John out of that, and we went on from there. So anyway, we get just another John Longren story. I got a whole bunch of them. Yeah, and we're getting ready to get on the flight to come back home. Skip and I were ready to go, and no John or Judy. So I said, well, we got to get on the flight anyway. So we get on the flight and we go in and sit down. Stewardess comes up and she says, "Yeah, these seats are somebody else's." I said, "Yeah, these are my ticket." Oh no, you've been upgraded. You're into business class. They had got a full flight, and anyway, John and Judy had got upgraded, but they found out early, and they went into the hospitality room, and John snookered. So he didn't mind flying home at all. It was no problem. So,
Well, Charlie, now that you're home, there are a couple of things that you were on the cusp of many things that happened. You've already talked about boys and girls getting together for phys ed classes,
right,
and things of that nature. I think there were some other elements that you were instrumental in. One is Title IX. I think people might be interested in hearing about Title IX and what that involved, and also the fact that you mentioned square dancing. And there were some things that the school had never done before, and that's having Al and Kathy Bain come before Christmas to have the whole school involved in square dancing.
yeah, kindergarten right through. We had everyone. I had two different square dances. Al and Kathy Bain came in a couple of years for me, and did live square dances for us for the whole school, and they went over really great. They were tremendous. I mean, and I ran into them this summer down at the Georgie, because they put a concert on down there. And so because they always ended up our square dance at Christmas time with Grandma got run over by a reindeer. And so they did that at the concert this summer down at the Georgie. As far as Title IX, I had a real good influence. Gay Gilbert, she was Cass Gilbert's wife at the Methodist Church, was teaching physical education, and she was really all for girls athletics, and I talked with her a lot about it. I was for it, but I didn't want it interfering with the boys either, I have to be honest. And I think in some cases things haven't been done right there. And when you're going to have to do that, you need to have new monies and so forth, because you're doubling the program. And I think it's been tremendous over a period of time. And I've coached quite a few of the girls. And then Lynn Barato came in, and Lynn was absolutely no nonsense. We're going to have girls' sports, and it's going to be equitable and so forth. But she was a good influence, and I always have said Gay Gilbert was the grandmother of our athletics for women, and Lynn was the mother of it. But she was really good, and for a while she wasn't quite sure she wanted to trust a man on anything to do with it. But then we started working some stuff in track and field in particular, and on the discus particular, which I had picked up a lot of stuff from a guy when I was at summer school, and so I started helping her some. So, and she was outstanding coach.
What year was that, Charlie, when you started?
Oh heavens! I started in 1960, but
72, it wasn't girls.
no.
So it was in the 70s?
Yeah, it must be. I really don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So,
couldn't believe it when it came out.
yeah, probably even in the 80s. Well, we had things going in the 80s because my daughter graduated in 81 and she had played field hockey and
Yeah.
she ran track, and I took the girls' track team because Lynn got sick one year. And I took the girls' track team, and it was a really nice, outstanding group. Just a side story. After I had done that, a year or so later, I told her I might be interested in taking softball. And she says, "Oh, that's good." I said, "You won't think so if I do." She says, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm going to get some of your track people and they're going to be on my track team." And she told me one girl in particular. I said, "No, I wouldn't take her because she wouldn't help me, but I'd take so-and-so." And she said, "She'd go too." She said, "Maybe they could do both." I thought I'd split, but as it turned out, I didn't do it at all anyway. And I haven't been in touch with her lately, but I have from time to time been in touch with her. She was up around the St. Lawrence River somewhere at that time last I knew. We did another thing unique on just before Christmas. After we stopped doing the square dances, we started doing some assembly games where the whole school was invited to an assembly of a basketball game. And those expanded to both girls and boys over a period of time. And then we had a superintendent that did away with it, but they have had some since. And we, at the time that we did that, we went around to all of our classes and explained to them how these are our guests and how we're going to treat them when they come and things like that. And they were pretty successful too. I think the first one happened kind of by accident because we got sent home because there was a bad storm one night over in Greenwich. And then actually we did them with Hartford for quite a while. And then I know Mike Poplaski, outstanding wrestling coach, did it with the wrestlers also. So, questions?
Charlie, what year did they change the girls' basketball rules? See, when
Well, the old
Ed and I
game,
were in school,
you had that six
girls-
people, yeah,
they
I
had
don't know.
They had a team of 6,
right,
3 on one side of the court,
yeah.
and 3 on the other.
And they modified that afterwards where one person could roam back and forth or something too, I think. But I don't know exactly when they did, but when we got into the interscholastics, we were always into more like the boys' rules. And that's got to be probably, that's got to be in the 70s. Yeah, because right now they're trying to update some banners in the school. Okay, like there's a banner up right now that has a list of all the girls that have scored 1,000 points. They haven't got one up for the boys yet, and they're trying to put that together. I know some of them off the top of my head. I know Bob Berger was one, Gary Wilson was one, Steve Ludd was one. I'm not sure just who else might have been.
Steve Watt.
Yeah, Steve Ludd was, yeah. And they're also putting up another banner for basketball because they did win the sectionals. Sheila Coyle was their coach, and she was here for 2 or 3 years. And they did win a sectionals and never got a banner up. All the other teams have got banners up since they've been in that school, not the ones from before that. And they're in the process of putting that together too. I know Sandy Adams' sister played on that team, and one of the Careys, and I don't remember everybody that was on that team. And it didn't get as much publicity as it does today. But so I can't really tell you when they made the change. And they were still playing that out in one of the Midwestern schools here not long ago. And in Australia, they play a game called netball, which is an Olympic sport, which is similar to our old girls basketball, only they don't have a backboard. There's a rim. And when I was in Australia, I went to watch them play, and they don't do it through their schools. It's all done through a club system, but they've got people all ages playing, you know, from 5 or 6 years right up to 70. And I went to one place while I was there where they had 17 basketball courts. One was indoor, so the others, 16 were outside. So, any other questions?
Just one point I wanted to make about the Title IX and the mixing of teams. When Title IX came along and we developed our girls' teams, we principals would always go to the league meetings. And at one of those meetings, Dr. Fitzgerald from Greenwich and I made a suggestion that on Friday night that the boys and girls team, basketball teams, play on the same night. You should have heard the uproar. The coaches weren't going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So, and the reason I brought it up was that I grew up in Massachusetts, and the girls team always played the preliminary game, and the boys played what was called the feature game. And so I was used to that. I said, what's wrong with that? We even rode on the same bus, and the coaches were going, you know. I said, come on. But at any rate, it went no place. But we had a historic moment the other night when Charlie was honored, and I'm talking with one of the referees who was a longtime coach, and I'm saying, remember when? And she said, I do remember that. She said you and Fitzy were really pushing it, but it never happened. I said, until tonight. And she said, yes. So we had a girls' game and a boys' game, all on the same in the same gym on the same night.
Yes, it was a nice night. Quite a few of my colleagues in physical education were not real big backers of the girls' programs coming in, and there've been some things I think have been done incorrectly, not at our level, but you have to have the same number of teams, and we finally have that now that we have a girls' wrestling team here. It's equitable here, but we hadn't been because they were counting cheering, which wasn't really legal. But what happened at some of the colleges is they dropped some sports rather than add a girls' team. I have a niece that was a manager at Notre Dame. She was an assistant manager on the football team and had hoped to be their first female head manager, but she didn't. But they made her the head manager of the wrestling team. And then they dropped wrestling so that they could be equitable as numbers of teams and so forth, men and women. And so she didn't get to do that. She stayed on, got her graduate work there anyway, and did promotion on all the uniforms and stuff like that, shirts that you can buy and stuff. So, other questions? Anything at all?
It's amazing when you look back at like the different things that I remember when I was in school. And thinking, you know, we went cross-country skiing, you had the ping pong thing going on, you had ice skating in the wintertime that we would all, you know, throw on our skates and go skate on
I had that on my notes too. We built skating rinks through the Rotary.
Wait a minute, who built the skating rink first? You did, I believe.
Yeah.
I remember seeing you out there.
Oh, even before that, we had one down at the carnival grounds.
Yeah.
The first one we had out here. A lot of funny incidents. I was out there one night spraying it, so forth for skating, and I slipped on the ice and fell. I had some kids there with me that night. They were helping me. Actually, they had gotten to some problems, nothing serious, but they were there. And I said, you know, I'm glad somebody was here in case I couldn't get up. You'd be skating over me in the morning. But so I stopped doing it alone because I used to go up there sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning and spray the rink. And I was telling one of my college professors about the program because we had a really great program. I thought, I mean, we had some years of disaster because we had polyethylene all over the campus and everything else where it didn't work. But we had others that worked very well, and we had enough skates collected so we could put the whole first or second kindergarten and first basically we were working with and put skates on every kid, and one of my high school kids would take them out there and help them learn to skate. And And that was good. And there's a lot of other things like Macaulay kids. They used to, when I was coaching basketball, they used to be in the gym. And every now and then, because they'd get battered with my son, the three of them, and they're playing together, and, you know, I booting them out, telling them to go on home and so forth, and praying they'll come back the next day, you know, because they used to, you know, shoot at the chinning bar and everything else. They had their own games going all the time there. So, but we started the winter sports. It didn't make any sense to me that we weren't doing winter sports, so we developed cross-country skiing and had skis for the whole class, snowshoeing and the skating, and I just thought it was things that we should be doing.
Charlie, tell them about the incident in the cross-country skiing.
I hadn't even thought of that one.
I just thought of that too.
Yeah, they had a bunch of business. They had planned it. They took off on cross-country skis, went up the old railroad bed, went to Rupert. They didn't come back. I didn't know whether to give them an A or to fail them. But
I think one of our kids was in that group.
yeah, but it was.
Well, we sent an escort to bring them back, remember?
No, I didn't remember exactly.
We called the local sheriff, Pete Hartney, and we said, Pete, we don't want them arrested, just go get them. Which he did.
Yeah, I got a bunch of Pete Hartney stories too. I was never one of the quiet people in school, in case you hadn't realized it. And I'm roaring away, just talking naturally. And my granddaughter was up there. She was probably 5 or 6 at the time. And Pete was there, and he said, "You don't know where your grandfather is, do you?" And she just cracked up.
Well,
So-
I'll have to interject. Anytime we studied our unit on sound, I would have the class be quiet. And I would say, now listen and tell me what you hear. And it didn't matter what time of day or where in the school you were, but guess what? We heard Mr. Perry's voice.
But yeah, but I still dabble with things at school, still work with a few kids. My son's coaching the girls basketball team, so I've been following that pretty closely. They're the #1 seed right now in Class D.
I saw you at a tournament.
Yeah, and he's scouting right now, scouting the Hartford game tonight, and he's got a great group of kids, just great. And I think Salem is just a very special place. I've never regretted that. It's one of the great moves that I made was to come here, and I really enjoyed it.
One of your teachers, Al Rusak, always brought the fire truck up and helped out on the skating rink.
Yep, and we won't even get like 100 Al Rusak stories too. So, but and we didn't always treat him well. Not just the kids, but the teachers too. And that I always felt badly about that. Yeah, he did a lot for the community. Yeah, question?
You have a rifle team now, too, in Salem.
Not at the school, I don't think.
I think Cambridge corresponded with them
I think it could
5
be.
weeks ago or so.
Okay.
That was one of the first mailings like they used to do back in '39 and so forth. And they would go supervised into an area and participate with 22 rifles on a target and then mail the targets. Pop them in an envelope and mail them to Salem. I think that was the first time I picked up that they had just reinstated the concept. And of
Well,
course, the
we
girls wrestling.
are merged with Cambridge in a lot of sports now.
Yeah.
And we'll be even more so, I think, another year. We are in football, wrestling. We were in boys soccer this last year. We are in field hockey. We are in baseball.
Yeah.
And I think there's a good chance that boys basketball next year will be merged. I'm not sure of that, and maybe not a permanent one there, but the numbers are way down in boys basketball. I think the girls softball will stay independent right at the moment. And, but I think that the girls soccer have a good chance that they'll merge with them next year too, because they cut down in numbers this year. They ended up playing the season with 9 or 10 kids. Nice group of kids. Yeah, they're-
I believe John Bow is
Yes.
instrumental in that program. And I believe they run it through the 4-H for liability
Yeah.
reasons.
But it's a great thing, I think, that
They did have, years and years ago, a rifle range off the, well, it would have been the 3rd and 4th grade corridor when I was in school, at the end of that hall, opposite the locker rooms. In that, there was access to the cellar there.
Mhm.
And they did, this is probably in the late 40s. I wasn't part of it, but I've heard of it. I know I had an uncle that was involved with it. And my father helped John J. Beatty haul in the steel for their backstops.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So, I'm from Cambridge. I've always admired the outside of your school. It's so beautiful. Can anybody give like a timeline of when it was built and a little history on that? And then even, I didn't know about the stained glass windows. Maybe you could arrange a tour someday.
Sure. The school, it was a WPA project. There was all kinds of money during the Depression. President Roosevelt had set aside money for municipal buildings and schools in particular. So we started to build a school in 1938, finished it up in 1939. No classes were held that year because they were still kind of finishing up. But graduation was held there. Dick McGuire always claims that I was in that graduating class, the first class to graduate from that new gym in that new auditorium. And the stained glass windows were the result of the architect saying, we want to build a school that represents the community, but also is probably going to be the most important building in the community. And so he had a stained glass window designer design all the windows. The scene in the window was to represent the subject being taught in the classroom. Now, some of them are not there anymore due to safety reasons. Certain doors had to be moved, but I believe the windows are stored someplace in the school. And the subjects on the windows are not always the ones that are taught in the room anymore.
Right.
In fact, one of the cafeteria windows is at my house because the school was selling off surplus stuff, and my wife picked up on it in the paper saying, hey, they're selling the doors with the stained glass windows. And I'm not too bright. I went over to the superintendent and said, you can't do that. I said, they're history. And he said, well, we've advertised it. We have to put up at least one. I said, fine. I couldn't go to the auction, but my wife did. She bought the door. Now it's the front door to our house. It's a cafeteria woman handing a piece of pie. So we managed to save one window. And then in '55 they put up the what they call the K2 wing, which is there. The rest of the elementary grades were always were on the first floor, with a few on sixth grade, I believe, was on the second floor. And then
Not when I started.
My sixth grade was on the first floor.
Oh, you were on the
Right
first
by
floor?
Yeah, and
bus
with
entrance.
the
Right by the
guidance,
bus
with the
entrance.
guidance offices where they had a sixth grade at one time.
Okay.
We didn't have any full-time guidance when I first started.
Some of these things occurred
Yeah.
before I got there, so I'm just remembering what I saw. And then in '84 they added on to the high school wing, new gym. We tried to get an auditorium and new music rooms, but could not sell it to the public or to the board for that matter, in fact. And then later on they added more rooms on to the elementary wing and to the high school wing.
Well, they did away with the ag room, which was over in the old elementary building.
Right, made that into classrooms.
And made that into classrooms.
Yeah.
And
built new ag rooms and
They
shops.
built new ag rooms
Yeah.
in the new wing, and it was a big change.
So what's your address? I can go look at your front door.
Right down the street,
3 houses down.
across from the school.
Across from the school.
It's across from the school.
36, look for 36.
36?
You'll see the door.
How convenient, living right
Yes.
across from where you work,
Well,
You weren't-
or not.
yeah, it is. It's my wife's favorite time of day is first thing in the morning at the end of the school day, because she loves to watch the kids. She just sits there.
This week I hate it, there's no kids.
Nobody, no excitement.
She's really bored.
So 1940 was the first year classes were held there.
Yes,
The stuff.
Yes.
So that was the year I started.
yeah.
Where was the school before when this was being built?
On West Broadway, there's a large brick building, which,
Apartments now.
yeah, it's the
Academy apartment.
Academy
Okay,
Apartments now.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Two floors of classrooms, and the third floor was a large room with a stage
Mhm.
in it.
Where was the Shushin school?
Was it what?
The Shushin school.
The Shushin School was in back of, somebody remember better than I, back of the Presbyterian Church.
Yes.
You know where Tom
Yeah.
Cassidy lives?
Yeah, and it burned down.
He basically is in that same, where the school was,
Oh, it's
on that
gone.
back alley.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where it was. Yeah.
Charlie, when I was listening to you at the table, you came from schools much like Bill, and larger, 1,000 per grade or
Well,
whatever.
mine was smaller than that, quite a bit.
But what happened was, how did you go from there in your sports to 8-man football? It was a switch, right? Did
Oh
you-
yeah, it was well, when I first came, we were playing 11-man.
You were paying.
We were playing 11-man, and then we went to the 8-man league,
Yeah.
so that we'd play schools that our own size.
Okay.
And we use a lot of the same concepts and so forth. It's just a little more wide open type of game. But we had some rules at that time. At first, couldn't spread too much and so forth. They later on allowed everything to go on that. And it's interesting about the coaching aspects. I can remember listening to Fred Staley, who was a business teacher, talking about the great teams before my predecessor Bob Carr was there, and the coach and how great he was. And coaches are usually just rated by the people that had them, and they're either the greatest or the worst or whatever. But I can remember talking with Jim Tomasi quite a bit, and this was particularly after he wasn't doing too well health-wise, and he'd say, "Well, you're okay. This is you know kana," and I didn't ever try to pretend to be, but I still hear the same things now from people saying, Charlie Perry and so forth. So it's just part of the business. That's all.
How long did they play 8-man football?
Probably close to 10 years, I'm not quite sure, maybe not quite that long. I was trying at the time because there were other people who were having trouble to get some other schools to go to it. What happened is we ran out of schools to play. When I started out with it, we had Argyle, Hartford, Warrensburg, Lake George, came in after with that. They weren't there with I think the first year we had it. Fort Ann. And then Argyle dropped it. There's a lot of politics in the schools. And that's what happened there, I think. And we had one year where we had an exceptionally good team. And I thought they had just as good material as we did. We killed them, but they had changed coaches every year. So the kids never knew what was happening. And they had one coach that was pushing to drop it. And he cut his way. So they dropped it. And next thing you know, we're down to 3 or 4 schools. And that's what we did. And we went with that league for a while. And Fort Ann couldn't quite stay with 11-man. We were just barely making it. We won one of the championships in there. I think we tied, maybe even before Dan. It's a good game. It's a fun game. A lot of our kids had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, we are running out of time. Is there one last question before I ring this class session closed? Just one last point with your question about the school. The first school was erected here on this street. It was a wooden building in 1790. A private school for a number of years. Then they decided to allow the kids from the village to attend this school. It could be day students, and then eventually it became a public school. And then they started to build the brick building on West Broadway. And the reason they did that was because fire was a real problem. A lot of the buildings had burned down in 1840 because most of Main Street was gone, and they said, well, we'd better start building better construction. So brick buildings and slate roofs. So the building on West Broadway was at the time a really great building, and it still is. So there you have it, all those years.
The private school, is that where the name Washington Academy came from?
Yes. Yeah.
And then
Yeah, it was at one time, it was the fifth oldest academy, private academy in New York State before going public.
It might not be related, but why, the attendance you said at one point almost was 1,000 and it's 500 now. Are people having fewer children, or do we have fewer, the population? Are people moving out of the area? What do we attribute?
I think jobs has a lot to do with it. I know my youngest daughter said they would love to have lived here, but no jobs for them in their job.
Population's much different, is it?
Yeah, and I think the families are smaller.
Yeah, and the pill came along.
That's right, I'm from 8, I was 60.
Okay, one more question, Larry.
I would like to make a statement before we leave that I am so happy with the way our janitors keep the school in Salem.
That's for sure.
Yes.
And always have.
I've been in other schools around the area, and nobody maintains their school like we do.
Yeah, that's true.
they
I
really
was.
take pride.
We had a thing going on one day with other schools coming to our school, and the guy says, "Did they do this special for us? They were doing the floors and so forth."
Every day.
I says, "No, it's the way it always is. That's true." And one of the things that we did as a faculty early on, if somebody did mark a wall or something, we got it taken care of right away. Instead of it building up and the next time somebody else is putting something up there, writing some graffiti and stuff like that. And we were always, everybody tried to take care of that quickly.
I understood that a day didn't go by that anything that was marked on the wall had to be removed before the next day.
Yep, and that was pretty much policy, and we all kept an eye out for it.
It was built with quality materials.
Yes,
Oh,
it
yes.
was. That's for sure.
Hold up.
Yeah, the architect called this his capital ship because that's the best building I have ever built.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
all
was in a
quality
classroom that
materials.
had a window seat and a fireplace and a mantle, and you were
Yeah,
in.
I enjoyed that
It
room.
was, it was like your home. It was, you could hang stockings on
I
the,
think that was the art room when I first started.
well, as soon as it was vacant, I ran down, can I have that room? And I had it till I retired.
Okay, I think we'll call this session to an end. Have a safe trip home. I thank you for coming,
Well, thank you.
and the class is dismissed.